Hi, everybody. Keith Collett in the safety department. I'm here with Josh Elam, one of our area managers, and we are jumping on Teams to talk about working alone. And we wanted to make this pre-recorded Teams call to have continue a conversation that we've been having internally. It's really based on a story that Josh had communicated with John Kessinger and then with me, and just brought up a bigger reality, which is the fact that one of the biggest hazards to every single one of you guys, project managers, area managers, everybody that works in the field, is a reality of the fact that you're doing so alone most of the time. And so I wanted to jump on a call here with Josh. What's up, Josh?
What's going on there? Hi, everyone.
Wanted to jump on a call here with Josh and continue this conversation. Now, from the front end, I just want to say this. The point of our time today is to really continue this conversation. And for some of you, it will be starting or creating conversation around this topic of working alone. So our goal is now, we don't have all the answers yet. We need your help in figuring all of that out. And I'll communicate more about that at the end. But we just want to continue the conversation. We want to start it in every area, every region, every market, with every PM and every AM, so that together we can have some really healthy dialogue about what really happens in the field and what we can do to work more safely moving forward. And so, Josh, I've heard a little bit of the story that you originally communicated to me, that you talked with Josh and all of your guys about. Would you mind sharing that with everybody today?
Yeah, sure, not a problem. What really brought this up, I'd worked in New York City for 6.5 years. I wasn't really accustomed to working in a rural area, so I guess this probably really never dawned on me before. However, in April of this year, I took over, started managing the Columbus, Cincinnati, and Kentucky markets. West Virginia is mixed in with that as well. So I was designated to go down to a job in West Virginia to mark out a couple soil borings. Not really knowing the area too well. I know that West Virginia can be pretty remote in some places, but it also has cities. However, with this particular job, there was no site contact. I didn't have anyone to call, while I got there. Other thing I didn't realize, and it's really going to be hard to realize until you get into the area, I didn't have cell phone reception. That was a, major concern. Also, it was on somebody's private property. So that kind of, that raised some red flags there. I really had nobody to talk to. I didn't know if anybody would, knew that I was coming that owned the property. I didn't want anybody to, roll up on me and surprise me in that sense. So, it raised, a lot of concerns there. Working alone, not having reception, being on somebody's property, who knows if they're aware that we are going to be there or not having a site contact or, somebody there, working side by side with me. And so I went back to John Kessinger, the director of, the Great Lakes there, and had that conversation. And, getting that conversation out there, that turned into having an area conversation. Other guys actually started raising concern as well. So it sparked some conversation there in that sense.
No, that's awesome, man. And I was supposed to be on that call, if you remember, and because of malfunctions with Teams, wasn't able to jump on that time around. But from my understanding, they had a really great conversation, a lot of dialogue. Like you said, lots of other guys raised concerns and spoke freely about their concerns with working alone, safely. And so that's really what we're here to do, is just continue that conversation and welcome everybody else in the company into it, because this is a big deal. Like I said, this is one of what I consider the two most hazardous things that we do. The two, and just so everybody knows, I think, and you guys all realize, those are working alone and driving safety, really. Like, you're in the car, you're in your trucks all the time, or your transit vans, or whatever it is you have all the time. And so thanks for sharing that. I think one thing that popped out to me is that in this instance, thankfully, nothing bad did happen, right? You walked away from it. But what I love about it, man, is even though nothing happened, you still, something didn't sit right with you, and you were like, I'm going to say something and start this conversation. And so let's talk about just for a second, like what are some, additional potential hazards that come along with working alone? So you mentioned, obviously some of the practicals, like, man, in this situation, you didn't have a site contact, no cell service, like you didn't know who the property owner was or if they were aware of your presence. But like, what are some other hazards that present themselves, when you're working alone? Is there any that come to mind?
I mean, there's some things, for one instance, let's say I was working out in a field that day. I didn't really have, the best of footing, really couldn't, see what was below me in some areas where I was locating. I could easily roll an ankle or, sprain an ankle or whatever it may be. So that could be a major issue. I'm out there and I'm getting injured or hurt and I have nobody to call or talk to. What if I'm, 1,000 feet away from my truck? How do I get back to my truck? I have to crawl there to get back to it. Wild animals as well. There could be, very well have been snakes, things like that. That I was, safe. God forbid you were to get bitten by something out there. Major issue. Again, not having that service and being able to contact somebody, or at least having, somebody there in place to where they could run and, get, whatever ambulatory care, whatever I may need. Or anyone for that matter. So those couple things, there come to mind, especially, with injury or, even getting your truck stuck. That could be another major issue. Let's say you're down and you get into some mud or whatever it may be. I know we have 4-wheel drive, but that, that doesn't, prevent, everything from getting your truck stuck. So that could be a major issue. So.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if it was you, but I remember somebody telling me a story about getting like stuck one time.
That did happen to somebody. I won't put anybody's name out there, but that did happen to somebody that was in this area beforehand. And that they had to hike it back a mile or two to, knock on somebody's door and say, hey, I need a tow truck to get my truck out of here. So.
I can relate a little bit in that I ran out of gas when I was 2 hours away, just like last week, going to a training and had to hike and get gas, but not fun. Thankfully, I had cell reception, though, in that situation. You know what I mean? At least I could tell my wife, like, hey, this is the situation I'm in,
Exactly.
In some of those settings, like, those things just aren't possible. So let's shift gears now and talk about, for a minute, like, you guys had came up with some just ideas, some recommendations, started brainstorming about, like, what are some procedures that we could potentially look at, maybe look towards the future, putting in place for, navigating the situations. Like, can you speak to any of that for us?
Yeah, I mean, we came up with a couple ideas there. One was, with the PC on the phone, getting on the phone with the client and, really trying to see if we can get somebody to represent, from the client side of things, on-site contact or somebody being there on site with us. Really trying to push for that. If that's not the case, we, came up with the idea of, working with a buddy system, whether it be 2 PMs on site or an area manager such as myself, going out to that site with that, particular project manager. We also mentioned, I think, things like a satellite phone and stuff like that, but that's something that we had, looked into and thought about. But really, I think that the buddy system was really kind of the way, what we were veering toward. But again, that's just, we got to have availability for that as well.
Yeah. And I think you guys were saying that, like, so that situation would be in, in the event that, like, you don't have a site contact, or you know that there's, beforehand that there's not going to be cell service, or some of those sort of extreme measures are there. And you're like, you know what, in this situation, we're out in the middle of nowhere. We know these things are going to be hazards. Like, if there's an AM available, I'm taking them with me. Or if there's an SPM or another PM or whatever it is available, like, we're just going to go hit this one together. And, obviously there's financial aspects that come that I'm sure, people will navigate as that became a reality. But yeah, I think those are definitely some good starting points for some ideas for how to navigate those situations. And I'll say this for everybody who's going to watch this too, like, we understand, like, this isn't a perfect science. Like, some of the stuff we're talking about right now, like I said, this is the starting point of a conversation that we want to welcome the rest of the company into, because we want to learn from everybody's experiences, and we want to understand other stories and other dynamics. And, quite frankly, there may be There may be people out there in New York or people out there in Phoenix or California or wherever it may be that have ideas that we've not thought about yet and have good ones, better ones than us that we end up, needing to take to heart and needing to look into and implement in the life of the company. And so that's really what this is all about. And so to not talk your ear off for too long, I want to just shift real quick into just a few takeaways, a few initial takeaways that we can leave you guys with who are on this call or who are watching this call. And most of these came out of the meeting that Josh had with John Kessinger and with that team there. And so these aren't even my ideas. These are all of your ideas, which I absolutely love. I think most about this whole situation. This is good stuff for just the life of safety in our company, period. And so one of those was always, to always wear high vis, always wear your PPE when you're out, when you're in these situations. It seems contrary to what you should do, right? You're like, well, I'm in this big open field. I'm by myself. No one's around. Like, I don't need this stuff. But at the end of the day, it's actually the opposite. Like, you're by yourself. And so somebody needs to know you're there. You know what I mean? And Josh, please feel free to chime in if you have anything to say about any of this stuff. But yeah, someone needs to be able to recognize you're there. Quite frankly, too, like you have a hard hat on that looks professional. You have your safety vest on. It looks professional. You're dressed for the job. Somebody's very less likely, if say a site contact doesn't know for whatever reason, hasn't been informed that you're going to be there. They don't think you're some weirdo in their backyard. They realize like, hey, this looks like a utility contractor. Or this looks like somebody's doing some work in my backyard. And they're not concerned and dusting off their rifle. Instead, they might come and bring you a glass of water. You know what I mean? So you have anything to say about that, Josh?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just putting a vest on, I think that kind of would probably let some guard down there. You're on somebody's property. Obviously, you look official. All of our trucks are wrapped with our lettering, our logo on it, and just putting that vest on again with our name on it. Obviously you're there to be doing important work, right? And that would probably show to that individual or property owner, let's say, if you're in that situation, that, hey, this guy's just not some random dude, like he said, just, waltzing onto my property.
Yeah, for sure. Do you want to speak to a couple of those other takeaways that you guys, do you recall any of those that you guys came up with?
I don't off the top of my head. I don't have them in front of me exactly, so I don't know if you've got them in front of you. But if you wanted to mention a couple more, I could probably just
yeah, we'll do
share
that.
My thoughts as well.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. So one of the other ones was like about having your first aid kit just readily accessible. Obviously you're not going to take that out with you necessarily while you're scanning, but that's why we put them in every vehicle. So obviously you have them in your vehicle or at least within walking distance in the event that something happens and you need to perform, self-care to yourself because you're out there alone. That's another one that was discussed. Another one was, like you said, as part of sort of the buddy system idea is really like always making sure someone other than yourself is aware of where you're going or where you're going to be working, right? So typically PCs, there's other people in the pipeline who will have scheduled, your area manager potentially will sort of know, where you're at, but may not know right in that moment. They knew, but they don't know right in that moment, right at that given moment. And so, if you're getting yourself in a situation like that, being in communication with one of your fellow project managers, with an SPM, with an AM, and letting somebody know like, hey, I'm going to this site, I may not have cell service, sort of like a check-in, check-out process, like letting them know like, I'm going to the site. This is the time I'm going to be there or whatever. And then getting a hold of them afterwards and know like, hey, everything's cool. Everything's good. Is there anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, exactly. We want to make sure that, everybody's getting to their job safely and going home safely. And that, at the end of the day, that's the most important thing, right? So kind of that check-in, check-out. Even if you like enter a place where you have no cell service. I mean, what I did that day when I was out there, I drove a half mile back down the road. And, I checked in with our PC. That's what I did and let her know that, hey, I don't have cell service out here. So, you could probably find a spot within the given area. Maybe, cell service pops up real quickly and you just check in with either your area manager or the PC or whomever it may be, that set the job up. I think that's really important just so that we're aware that, hey, we know that this person right now doesn't have reception. So we want to make sure that, again, they're checking in at the end of the day and going home safely after they complete that job.
Yeah, for sure. And then there was just two other things really, which were, property boundaries, just saying like, if you basically went in doubt, like contact the client or property owner. Again, that may not always be possible, but just being mindful of those things when you're out there and try to, so you're not going on someone's property that you shouldn't be and stuff like that. And then I think it was, you guys brought up the fact that, especially in our area, and I imagine a lot of others too, but there's a lot of people that hunt in rural areas, right? And the laws and the way things work are different in those different areas. And so if you ever come across, hunters, anything like that, get out of that area.
Just get out of there. Yeah. There's no jobs worth being shot at. Or shot toward, let's say. So you're better off just getting out of there, especially when it gets into, that hunting season. Yeah, that was one of the things that we thought about too. Again, these are things I didn't think about while working in New York City, but every market's different. So.
Yep. So just get out of there, get a hold of the manager, and sort of reconvene from there if that situation ever presents itself. And so we'll end with this. I was just thinking about, okay, like we're talking about all these different things, but where do we go from here, right? Like what's sort of an actionable step from here? And so what we really want to communicate to you guys through this is that like I said from the beginning, I've reiterated a couple of times, this is about starting a conversation on this topic company-wide. And so where we go from here is we start these conversations within our areas, within our markets, between one another. And so one of the practical ways that we're going to do that, because you guys, we want to make some space to hear other stories. Like you're hearing Josh's today, but we want to make some space to hear your stories, to hear some of your feedback, to hear your ideas, as we've mentioned a couple times in this call. And so one way we've came up with that we think we can do that is we're going to be doing a toolbox talk on working alone here in the month of October. And we're going to continue this conversation by rolling into a toolbox talk, which will be facilitated by your area manager in your respective areas, to where you guys all individually have the opportunity to contribute to the conversation, to tell your stories, to offer ideas, to offer suggestions. And we're going to document those suggestions. We're going to document those notes taken from all those different meetings, and ask that they be turned in so that we can compile them and look at them together and begin to develop some actual procedures that become more than recommendations in the life of our company, to keep all of you guys safe. And so be expecting to see some of that communication coming through, to make sure that you guys attend those meetings when your area managers host those different meetings. And we look forward to hearing all of your feedback and hearing what you guys like I said, hearing your stories and hearing what you guys want to bring to the table about this issue, and doing something about it. I mean, that's the main thing at the end of the day. And so you guys can hold us accountable to that. And we're doing the best we can, and we're going to continue to try to do that. And so again, Josh, really appreciate you, man, taking the time, even though nothing happened that time around, again, just going with your gut and being like, hey, I need to say something. I need to talk about this. And really appreciate you taking the time to, jump on here today.
Thank you, Keith. I really appreciate you joining in on the conversation and getting this out there and creating this awareness. I think it's highly important. At the end of the day, we really want to protect our people, and that's why we started having this conversation where we're at now. So.
Yep. And that's the whole thing. I mean, everybody knows the slogan, right? Safety, always on our radar. And, a lot of times we can be like, oh, that's just a marketing tactic, or that's this, that, or the other. And it is. And it's catchy for a reason. We want people to remember it. But at the end of the day, that we say that because we mean it. We want it to be on our radar so that, like Josh said earlier, we all go home every single day. So I think I lost Josh, but appreciate him being a part of this today. Appreciate all of you guys taking time to listen, and look forward to hearing all of your feedback. You guys have a great day.